All right, we've made it Unit 3. We're going to talk about the structure of the government as alluded to in our last unit. This unit focuses mainly on the articles of the Constitution, which explain the structure of our government. That's this video. That's the next video. That's this unit, the structure of our government. So in this video, we're going to do the basics before we dive deep in the videos after this. List the three branches of government, be able to describe the purposes of those three branches of government. Start the timer. Timer has begun. Unit 2, we talked about the history. We talked about the creation of the U.S. government. What do you mean history? I don't remember any wars or any battles. We talked about the history in terms of the events, sort of, but mainly we talked about the ideas and the documents. We went back in the past, if that's your understanding of history. We were talking about the 1700s, the 1800s, the ideas, and writing those ideas down, and how those ideas still matter today. And today we're really going to talk about how those ideas work, the rules that have created those ideas, the structure of those ideas, and how those ideas affect you every day. The three branches of government. Remember the ideas, the documents, and the Constitution. We're focusing mainly on the Constitution. Oh my gosh, I thought you said you were never going to show us this again. I lied. You're going to see this forever. Okay, and then the documents. Today, obviously I have to talk about those documents because we're looking specifically at the U.S. Constitution, and we're looking at the articles because that's where the rules or the structure of our government is created. Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 explain the legislative branch then, and they explain the legislative branch today, and the executive branch today, and the judicial branch today, and all the powers then and today. It's been written down. The interpretation has changed over time, but for the most part, the rules and the structure that I talk about right now and today are the rules and the powers and the roles of then. The Constitution explains the three branches of government: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The articles tell us the powers of each branch of government. The articles, Article 1 explains this branch, what this branch can do, and who is in it. Who is in the executive branch? Who are in the judicial branch? All right, a little bit of a review. We've seen this before. When we look at the different levels of government, we look at the national, also known as the federal, sometimes called the central level of government. We look at the state level of government, and we look at the local level of government. For the most part, each level is very similar. They have three branches of government. The only difference is you'll notice here at the local level in your county and town, you don't have a judicial branch. That doesn't mean there isn't a judicial branch in your town. You do. There is often a court in every county. There are regional courts. There are sometimes city and town courts, but those courts fall under the state level. There isn't a local level. There might be a local court. There might be a court near you, but that branch falls under the domain of the state level judicial branch. But everything else, a legislative, executive, and judicial, at the state level, a legislative, an executive, and a judicial. And they pretty much do the same things. They have the same people. We just change the names. And we'll talk about that in another video. For example, we'll talk about the executive level. At the national level, the executive branch, we call it a president. We have a very similar person who runs the state, but we call that person a governor. Very similar in their responsibilities, very similar in the roles, very similar in their powers. We just have a different name. Senate, we still have a Senate. House of Representatives becomes the House of Delegates. That's federalism. When we go side to side between the branches, that's separation of powers. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. Federalism was Article 4 of the Constitution. It decided the different levels. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, and up and down is Article 4. Our government was completely explained in the Constitution. I want to look mainly at the national level today, and we're going to focus mainly on the national level for these videos. We may discuss the state level in future videos, but if we don't, it's going to follow the same rules, it's going to follow the same structure, it's going to follow the same pattern. So if you understand the national government, then you can take that understanding and carry it to the state level and apply most of the same rules and roles and powers. So if you master the national level legislative, the national level executive branch, and the national level judicial branch, your understanding of the national or the federal level pretty much explains the same as the state. There's going to be differences, but if you get national, then you pretty much get it all. Federalism, remember that's the up and down. That's how we divide power between national and state governments. They have concurrent powers, meaning there's some powers that they share. The national government can tax you. The state government can tax you. But they also have powers that are separate and not shared, like military and schools. Let's dive into our U.S. Constitution. Let's look at the articles today. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution explains everything we need to know about the legislative branch. What does the legislative branch do? The legislative branch creates laws. L-A-W. That's not right well. Article 2, 1-2 describes and explains everything we need to know about the executive branch. Legislative branch makes things happen. What? No. The legislative branch writes the law and then tells the executive branch, make it happen. Bring this law to life. The legislative branch writes the law, but just because it's written down doesn't mean it's going to do anything. So then it's up to the executive branch to make it happen. Article 3 explains the judicial branch. And they interpret the law. They write it. They do everything to make it happen. And we'll talk about this more. And then these guys review it. And then they make sure that this law is fair. They make sure the law doesn't break the Constitution's rules. They also determine if someone has broken this law. Let's look at the legislative branch. So once again, they make the laws. They write the laws, right? They write the laws. They take the bill. They turn it into a law. The executive branch enforces the law. They make the law happen. They bring the law to life. They take it off of the page. They take the words and they do everything that needs to happen to make sure that the law exists. If there's a law that says you can't kill people, how do we make that exist? You hire cops. If there's a law that says everyone must go to school, then the executive branch has to do everything to bring those written words to life. That means hiring teachers. That means building schools. They do everything to make the law the reality. If there's pollution laws, they'll do everything to make sure that pollution laws are followed. And then last, the judicial branch, they interpret the law. That means that they look at the law and says, is this law legal? Does the law follow the U.S. Constitution? If it violates anything in the U.S. Constitution, then we must throw out that law. They also determine if people have broken the law or not. That's what courts do. If there's a law that says we are not allowed to pray, the court would look at that and say, wrong. The First Amendment says we cannot make laws that infringe upon people's right to worship. They cannot make laws about religion. And so that law would have to be thrown out according to the United States Constitution. That's the job of the Supreme Court. Only men can marry women. They reviewed this law. That was a law in many states. In many states, up until 2014, I believe it was, there were laws that outlawed same-sex marriage. Judicial branch looked at that and said that violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which says everyone should be treated equal under the law. That does not treat people equally, and thus those laws were all thrown out because they violated the Constitution. That is the job of the judicial branch. They also look and see if anyone has broken the law. That's your third branch of government. So there it is. They make the law. They enforce the law. Enforcing is always a weird word because people are like, what do you mean enforce? I like to call it they bring the law to life. They make it more than just words on a page. And then last but not least, they interpret what the law really means, and they interpret or try to understand if people have broken the law. There's your fundamental political principles. Representative government. Whoa, why am I so big? I don't want to be so big. Shrink. So let's look at representative government. Why are we pulling up representative government? Why are we going about these? Because that's what the legislative branch is. It is a representative government. If you look at Article 1, it talks about who is in the legislative branch. We have a House of Representatives. We have 435 members in the House of Representatives. 435 people belong to our representative government. 13 of them come from the state of North Carolina. So North Carolina gets 13 representatives in Congress. And we get 2 senators, 1 representative for 700,000 states. It's all in the Constitution. It explains the structure, the roles, the rules, the power. It's all written down. It's a blueprint. And then you have the Senate, which is the upper, more important, I guess you would say, building in our Congress. There are 100 members. That means every state gets 2. So we get 13 in North Carolina, 13 representatives, and we get 2 senators. This is a representative government. That's that fundamental political principle, basic government ideas. Oh man, I've done too many videos. I can no longer speak. Legislative branch, they make the laws. Those are the people that make the laws. All of these rules are explained in the Constitution. The executive branch is explained in Article 2 of the Constitution. It says that we're going to have a president and a vice president. It talks about their cabinet. So it's not just these 2 guys. All of these people have a specific job that they do, and their job in the executive branch is to bring laws to life. For example, this guy, is that Panetta? I believe that's Panetta. No. That's not the guy. I think it is. I can't remember these guys anymore anyway. This is 2012. He would determine what. So if you made a law about roads, he's the Department of Transportation Secretary. So if we make a law about roads that speed limit's going to be 55 miles per hour, it's up to him to make sure that that law is enforced. He would make sure that there are speed limit signs that say 55 miles per hour. He would hire police officers to enforce that. He would do everything you do to bring that law to life. That's what the cabinet does. And every one of these guys. Arnie Duncan, his job is education. And if they pass a law that says everybody's got to take tests, then he's the guy that has to make the test. Make sure that all the places are giving the tests out. Make sure that the tests are fair. Make sure there's someone to grade the tests. All the things that have to do with the test, Mr. Duncan would be in charge of. Bring the law to life. See, these are all the different departments. Where is education? Education. If we make a law about tests, this department, this building would bring that law to life. That's what the executive branch does. Yeah, I got it right. I think it's Ray LaHood. Ray LaHood, I think, is who you're, not Panetta. Panetta's right here. Panetta was the defense guy. He was in charge of the military. LaHood was in charge of transportation. So if we made a law that said we need to create more roads, then it would be up to him to hire the construction workers, to find out how much money it would cost, where do we build the roads. We talked about the speed limit. There's your guy, Arnie Duncan. Anything that we passed in terms of education, different types of testing, different types of classes, he would set all of that up and so forth and so on. That would be Timothy Geithner, in charge of transportation. Hillary Clinton was the Department of Secretary of State. That means when we're dealing with other nations, she was the lead representative in our negotiations, in our talks with other states. Yeah, man, I got all these right. This is an old PowerPoint. They all quit. They always quit. It's not like, oh, they quit on Obama. Everybody quits, folks. Judicial branch. We talk about the judicial branch, and it is explained in the Constitution. You have the U.S. District Court. You then can appeal up to the U.S. Court of Appeals. We talked about this in an earlier video. We're just going to go over the basics here. And then at the top, you have the Supreme Court. 9 Supreme Court justices. They mainly review issues that deal with the Constitution. They also will listen to appeals from the U.S. Court of Appeals. Most cases are going to go to district court where there is a jury. These are federal issues that can be federal criminal offenses, but they can be other issues as well. There it is. That's your 3 branches of government. You should have a general idea of the 3 purposes of the government. I could go deeper in this video, but I'm not going to, because we will go further into this in other videos. So list the 3 branches. Can you? Article 1 talks about the legislative branch. Article 2 talks about that's the worst 2 I've ever seen, the executive branch. And Article 3 talks about the judicial branch. Can you tell me what they do? The legislative branch basically writes the laws. The executive branch enforces the law, although I hate that word, enforce. They basically make it happen. They bring it to life. And then the judicial branch interprets the law. They interpret the written word to make sure that it follows the Constitution. They make sure that it's fair. They also interpret, did you break that law or did you not break that law? See you in the next video.